Today's podcast is partly on history, some sociology, and yeah, some personal opinions, probably. Okay, well, I'm going to be looking at three men today throughout history from three different countries, very separate.
Three men.
Three men.
Okay.
Yeah, three men, three individuals throughout history, whom I grew up knowing about, certainly one in more recent times. And I think they're very interesting and also, yeah, very similar in quite a few ways. Right, the first guy I'm going to look at was someone I grew up learning about when I was about 6 or 7 years old. Funny enough, from my local area in the UK of Essex. And this gentleman is called Dick Turpin, Richard Turpin. Yeah, I'm sure Steve has heard something about this gentleman. Yeah. Right, Dick Turpin, he was born in September 1705 in a place called Hempstead in Essex. I've actually been to see the place he was born, or certainly stood outside it. You can sort of go inside. It's a pub. Well, no, it's a house, private house, and where he worked was a pub. The family-owned business it's now a pub. But yeah, certainly he was he had several brothers and sisters. He was the son of a butcher. So obviously he grew up in Essex, in his town. It's possibly likely that he was a son, because he was the son of a butcher, that he was a butcher at some point, or apprentice butcher, or learning the family business, at least. And yeah, he had a rudimentary schooling. He could read and write. He went to school, appears he attended school, because it comes a bit later in his tale here, his story. Well, sometime in the 1730s, he decided there was another way in life, and he decided to turn to crime, effectively. And he joined a gang of criminals called the Essex Gang. Funny enough, very original. It comes from Essex, so they called themselves the Essex Gang. Hardly discreet, but yeah. And really, they were just doing deer poaching, i.e. rustling meat, which, you know, given his family occupation, I'm beginning to wonder just how innocent that was from the rest of the family. But yeah, there's no evidence of this as far as I know. Yeah, and when he first went into deer poaching, it wasn't a major problem. It was a felony, you know, not really seen as a serious problem. The trouble is, because it effectively wasn't seen as serious, people began to suffer, and it grew and grew and grew. Remember, at the time, there were economic hardships on people. People turned to crime for various different reasons. You make your own mind up why Dick Turpin turned to it when his family were actually quite successful doing what they were doing. But there we go. But deer poaching actually became such a problem that they tried to strengthen the laws against it. And they brought in something called the Black Act, which was actually an act, rather interestingly, to prevent you blackening your face at night in a forest, because obviously rustling took place at night. So they used to blacken themselves. Criminals did. So if you got caught with literally a black face by a policeman from the authority, you had some explaining to do. Yeah. And eventually, yeah, it became more and more serious that they did actually strengthen the law. And if you actually got caught doing this rustling, you could be sentenced to 7 years transportation, i.e. sent to Australia, which was a penal colony at the time. Not the nice sunny paradise it is now. It was actually quite a hard life to move there, although there's another side to this as well. Well, anyway, over the years, the early parts of the 1730s. The gang did various violent robberies, crimes. You know, they were not nice people. They were gangsters, what we would term hardline gangsters today. Yeah, sometimes in modern media, there's a tendency to paint these people as, you know, all dandy and gentlemanly and friendly. They were not. They were desperados, as we would call them today, or outlaws. Yeah, the gang went around. Sometimes they were with Mr. Turpin, other times they weren't. It would suggest to me that I think he was still carrying on with his family business to some point. Yeah, so he was moonlighting one way or another. Well, obviously, I spoke about Dick Turpin joining the early 1730s. By 1735, the gang had either been apprehended, arrested, or they'd fled to other regions. The split. Basically, the gang died out. It's after this point that Dick Turpin became, or went into the career he became most famous for, and that was a highwayman of stand and deliver fame. He would approach, or he would stop people traveling on the roads and relieve them of their various items and wealth, as he saw fit. Obviously, it was a occupation that had its perils. It's very unlikely that highwaymen ever operated alone. So when you see the picture of the lone highwayman standing there, it probably wasn't. He'd have probably had at least one or two associates with him, people to keep guard, people to come in, go the other side of the coach or whatever, make sure nobody was about to produce a firearm against them or any other weapon. So it was a gang operation, and he did have associates to do this. But again, they got apprehended one time. The authorities came, found out where they were. There's a story that Dick Turpin accidentally shot, there's some confusion, one of his accomplices called Matthew King. He's actually been attributed as Tom King, who was another highwayman not associated with Dick Turpin. And I was always brought up it was Tom King. The guy was called Matthew King. Again, this is what accounts you believe. I've seen the more substantial ones about this, so legend followed him. Okay, well, he disappeared for a while. Nobody's quite sure what Mr. Turpin was up to until about 1737, when he ended up in York, in the north of England. There is a famous story that he supposedly rode in a panic from London to York on a horse called Black Bess. Yeah, anyone that likes this romantic story, I'm sorry to disappoint you. And I grew up with this one as well. I don't think the horse would have survived, and it is a story of fiction written 100 years later. Dick Turpin himself may have ended up in York, may have gone to Holland for a time, and then come back across the North Sea like this. Again, it's all conjecture. But anyway, he went around York posing as a horse trader under the name of John Palmer. So he was making money. Well, anyway, he went about. He was an Essex person. I'm from Essex. He happened to like a lavish lifestyle. As a lot of other Essex people, excluding myself, do like. We like as people from Essex like to play on having the good luxuries, the good life, the good food, and everything else. And there were some questions about him before this, but he managed to draw attention to himself by getting a little bit Essex cocky and threatening someone. I think he shot some guy's some guys cock in the street and threatened to shoot him as well over some payments or just generally threatening, probably under the influence of alcohol. But yes, if you're up to no good, it's not always a good idea to actually draw attention to yourself, especially in a public place during the day. Anyway, one local person in authority, a local judge, got a bit suspicious about his lifestyle, suspected that his horse trading may not be legitimate goods, and did some investigation about him. And yeah, they did actually find him stolen horses, so the story goes. They went to his house or somewhere he's storing them, and people identified the horses that he was holding as their own. I mean, he claimed he bought them legitimately, whatever else. Now, at that time, horse thievery was actually what we call a capital offence. Yeah, you could be hanged for it. So, okay, it's one of these things, yeah, the horse is property, but it was up there with murder in seriousness, in actual effect. Well, anyway, they didn't know who this guy was. As far as I know, he was still John Palmer. They had no records of where he came from. But they had arrested him. Now, Mr. Turpin could write, because he'd done some schooling. And he wrote a letter to his brother-in-law, who was still in Hampstead, probably for help. What actually happened, I believe, is that it appeared at the post office. In those days, you didn't pay a stamp. Whoever it got delivered to had to go and pay at the post office. Well, his brother-in-law denied, I don't know anyone from York. Who would I know in York? He probably did know and didn't really want to be associated with somebody who knew was up to some no good. Anyway, the letter ended up at another post office, the main post office nearby, and somebody who actually taught Dick Turpin, so the story goes, it wasn't his schoolmaster, it was one of his own mates at school who taught him to actually write, recognise the handwriting. Now, I don't know how good this is. I can't recognise anyone's handwriting, but apparently his handwriting was recognised and the information was sent back up to York. We know who this guy is. His name is Richard Turpin. He's a known felon down where we are. And yeah, they identified him. So, having known this information and other things, they decided to put Dick Turpin on trial. Now, this is the bit I do think about Mr. Turpin's story that is very unfair as a fellow Essex person and as a fellow, human being almost. Disregards of what he's accused, not accused of doing. At the time, it was expensive for him to have effectively got his own legal support, professional legal support. So he was effectively acting in his own defence. The judge was there at trials to oversee and check that the defendant was being treated fairly. So that effectively this was at the judge's discretion. Our poor old Dick here, he couldn't afford a lawyer really, or didn't have access to one. There was no legal aid or anything. So he had to use his own wits. He did argue the fact that some of the offences have been committed down in Essex and he should be tried down there. He also argued the fact that he couldn't call his own witnesses because most of the people that knew him as good character were from Essex. He basically didn't have a fair trial. When you actually read the transcript, in my opinion, it was not a fair trial. The guy could not defend himself, even by the standards of the day. So I'm not applying modern law to this. I'm looking objectively. But that being as it is, he was basically sentenced to be hanged. And the judge asked him, can you think of any good reason really for me not to hang you? And he said, yeah, I haven't had a fair trial. I haven't been given time enough. The judge says, yes, you have. You've known about it as long as we have. They were determined to get him. They got their man. They knew who he was. They were determined to see him ended. Anyway, during this time, and this shows corruption in the system as well, he was in prison. He was somebody of notable celebrity status. What the jailers were allowing to happen was that people to come and visit him in prison and to have drink and have meals with him. And actually, the jailer was making money from it. The local people supplying the food were making money. Everyone. So nobody was complaining. It was a money-making operation at this point. Anyway, Dick Turpin, he accepted his fate. Leading up to this, he decided to buy himself a new outfit. When you've got to look smart for your big closing moment. And he hired some mourners, somebody to stand there while he's been hanged and probably buried. Although he wasn't actually buried, probably, but that's contentious. And to be there to support him, as it were, to shed a few tears. And on the 7th of April, 1739, he was taken to the scaffold in York, where, interestingly enough, York at the time did not have a professional hangman. Who they actually had to hang him was another highwayman that had actually pardoned to act as a hangman. Dick Turpin, being the good Essex boy he wasn't going to let any Tom, Dick or Harry hang him. He decided to throw himself off the scaffold, basically. And he died very quickly, within 5 minutes. Probably broke his own neck doing it. He died quite quickly. But he died with honour. As a fellow Essex person, I'm rather pleased about that. At least he went out with some dignity, as it were, even if his trial wasn't fair. Okay. Moving on, and you'll see connections here. The next person I'm going to talk about is from a different country, Australia. And this guy is Ned Kelly. He's ahead of me here. I said Australia. He was born sometime in December, we think, 1854. The records in Australia were not particularly well kept, but he was born in South Australia, in what was known as the colony of Victoria. Remember, in America and in Australia, the English dependencies were called colonies. Individual states were effectively separate colonies. Now, his story is he was of Irish family. His family originally Irish. His father was sent over there. He was actually a convict. So his father was, deemed to be a villain. His father died when he was 12 years old, and his father died in prison for some reason. And at 12, he was left as the eldest male in the family, i.e., he was expected to be responsible for looking after his family. Remembering that his family lived in poverty, or what would be considered poverty, they were given land. They had land, but it probably wasn't very good land to grow anything on, dry, everything else. So life was hard. During his youth, he was always getting into trouble. Him and his family were. They were considered troublesome. Not alone on that. There was a big Irish community in Ireland and in Australia, and they were considered problems. Obviously, they were deported there for many different reasons. But there was all sorts of things. One day the police raided his house. He fired a gun to protect himself. He may not have even known that there were police coming after him. It could have been anyone, bandits or anyone. Don't forget, we're talking about a lawless society. I think he was shot at a policeman, and he was done for he was accused of attempted murder. His mother was imprisoned because of this, as being part of it. The woman was just there for her family, probably, Well, what actually happened, it kept going on and on. He was upset about his mother being imprisoned. Sometime later, I'm sorry, I do the story here, but sometimes later, his younger brothers managed to kill a policeman. And at this point, they officially became regarded as being outlaws, quite literally outlaws, bandits, officially. Well, they had nothing to lose, so they went around generally doing what bandits do in the area, outlaws do in the area, robbing people, robbing organisations, anyone that they deemed worthy of robbing. They were not nice people, but they had a lot of sympathisers in the area. Again, mainly the Irish community there, who saw them as standing up to authority, probably. Again, we're talking about corruption. The police in Australia at the time were not always what they should be. They were out to get their men, probably. They knew he was a bit of a problem. So they accused him of a lot of things. The family probably got accused of things that was nothing to do with them, or possibly even to cover up other things that were going on as well. So, modern day historians have realised this. They've actually found strange things in the records that don't add up. Things like this, modern day scrutiny. But anyway, so eventually, there was the Kelly gang, as they became known. They're actually famous for wearing armour. They actually had armour made up to protect themselves. So this was, to protect themselves from the bullets, as it were. So they walked around in what was quite heavy armour at the time. Question about how effective it was. But I've actually seen the armour, the actual armour, when I visited Australia. It's quite substantial. It was like a big tin helmet. The breastplate, really. Just to protect the trunk of the body. Just again, another important thing. Well, after various different things and histories about it, which is interesting to read, but could last all day talking about it. They were eventually involved in a siege and a shootout. They planned to actually, rob a train. Things didn't go quite as planned, really. And they ended up hauled up in a hotel, which they took hostages in there. Strangely enough, the gang, you'd have thought, took in hostages. Members of the hostages after, confused, said, well, they treated us well. Gave them drink, food. They kind of looked after them. And you have to remember the Kelly gang in the region did have sympathisers. So, it might have been that these hostages were known sympathisers, or the Kelly gang believed them to be like that. Probably had a bit of a laugh, played cards with them, other things, nothing to lose sort of thing. But so basically they had hostages there. They were letting some go as well, those that they deemed they could trust, which probably cost them ultimately. There was only one young hostage, I think, in there that for some reason Ned Kelly bullied a bit, kept him in absolute terror. I can't find out why. It may be just didn't like the look of him. It may be the guy remember, these people had egos. It maybe the guy thought he'd go a bit cocky and insulted him or something, or threatened him. Yeah. But anyway, old Ned gave him a bit of a hard time. But anyway, there's a shootout in the hotel. Interestingly, the police were opening fire on these hotels. They were not built substantially. They did not have thick walls. So they didn't need to be. Bullets were passing through the walls and hitting the hostages. So there were hostages actually killed by the police. One young lad, as young as 13, killed. There's always the argument in this, well, if they weren't being held hostage in the first place, the police wouldn't have acted, this wouldn't have happened. But yeah, we see this happening today in modern things, that, yeah, hostage situations, or yeah, people hiding behind innocent people. Anyway, Kelly was actually wounded. Other members of the gang were killed in this. He managed to slip out the back of the hotel and into the bush. And yeah, somehow him and his gang managed to double round and try to take the police from the rear. In effect, open fire and have another shootout in a bid to get away. I mean, you've got to remember, they were going to be chased anyway. They were going to take out as many people as they could. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, the shootout ensued. In the end, it was all for nothing because the police, yeah, they were going to overpower them. Kelly survived. He was arrested, stood for a trial. He was convicted of murder. I mean, yes, in the events leading up to this, he had managed to kill policemen and murders and everything else, yeah. And on the 11th of November, he was actually hung in Old Melbourne Jail. I've actually visited it. I've actually seen the bit of wood he was hanged off, which is quite interesting. I met a curator of the museum there who told me that actually they filmed the film about Ned Kelly's life, starring a certain celebrity called Mick Jagger there. And the comment this curator said to me, he said, yeah, they staged the hanging here. Shame they didn't actually go through with it properly in the film. He wasn't a Mick Jagger fan. I thought it was a little bit unfair. Yeah. Strangely enough, when Kelly was being hanged, there were protests in the streets to have his sentence reprieved. I first became aware of Ned Kelly, it probably must have been the 80s in the UK, when I saw a segment on a news programme there where there were still calls for Ned Kelly to receive a posthumous pardon for being treated unfairly and with police evidence and things. Yeah, they're still going about today. He's seen as still a bit of a hero. The last person I'm going to look at is a local person to us in Brazil called Lampião.
Lampião.
Lampião. Yeah, Lampião. Yeah, Lampião. And he was born in 1879, June the 7th, in the state we come from, Pernambuco. Yeah, in the interior. We live on the coast. He was born in more the interior. I do have family connections there from my wife's side, which is quite interesting. Not directly with him, but yeah. Brazil in the late 1800s, early 1900s was a very lawless place. It's not like it is now, absolutely perfect, yeah, with law and order. It was really, really Wild West sort of things, where the Wild West had died out effectively in America. Local landowners were effectively the law. They administered the law themselves. Yeah, they decided. So if you had money, basically you were top king. Yeah, it's all changed since then. Myself and Steve will testify. Earning his life for his family, they did have a reputation of being troublemakers, even in the time. they were extreme troublemakers. Yeah, I mean, they were moving about a bit. Different things were happening. You had a lot of family feuds, families against families. My own family, members of my own family actually were involved in a family feud. Someone died from this region. Someone died. They had to change their family name and move to another area. That was not uncommon in Brazil. I'm trying to find out if there's a connection with this story or not. Because, yeah, obviously, yeah, my wife's mother's family had to move from the interior very, very quickly at some point and change their name. I have been told that my wife's family, moving on, was actually scared of this gang, of this family. Anyway, Lampião's own father was killed by the police. And yeah, he wanted vengeance for it. He was not very happy about it. I mean, his family, again, probably by local landowners and powerful people, and the police were being targeted. Whatever you might think, whatever was going on, a little bit of targeting going on. Yeah, I mean, he was vicious towards the police. There's no doubt about it, that he was wrought with hate, and he called the police monkeys. That was it. To him, they were less than low. You know, they were animals. They were less than animals. But anyway, in the early 1920s, Lampião took up with a gang. When the head of this gang retired, he moved to another state and actually lived to an older age. Like everything else, it's like in America, you could jump to another state. Yeah, disappear, change your name. He became the leader. For the next 16 years, Lampião basically led a large army of bandits, on and off. I mean, yeah, around about 100 people, probably more. He did mix violence with piety. Funny enough, he was religious. He carried religious emblems on his outfit, as it were, his uniform. And he was good to the local Catholic priests. You know, he showed respect in churches and places like this. But he could be very vicious. If he considered you an enemy, he was, yeah, evil, basically. Yeah, he didn't kill if he killed one person or 100. It was all the same to him if he thought they were against him. Yeah, probably psychopathic tendencies, one could suggest. Yeah, so he was a mix. Now, it really all came, yeah, one of the most notable things, yes, there was violence all across Pernambuco, the interior Pernambuco from the northeast. Probably one of the most notable episodes actually happened in a neighbouring state called Bahia. Yeah, we went into a town, really took over the town, effectively. Went round, robbed the wealthy people. And then, because he was such into wealth distribution, he would then pay for any goods that he is made with money to the local shopkeepers. Yeah, an interesting parallel that might ring some bells with some people, or you know. Yeah, he was. Yeah, I think he was a good PR. He was a good PR, certainly. If you're good to me, I'm good to you. If you're against me, this is what happens. Yeah. Funny enough, around this time as well, he did find some romance. There's a nice Brazilian romantic story where he met a woman called Maria Bonita, whom apparently got his heart. I'd like to say she calmed him down a bit, but she was probably a bigger bandit as he was. Yeah, she could use a gun and was prepared to do violence as well, from what I've read about her. Okay. Well, anyway, during this raid he did, He actually massacred in Bahia 7 policemen, quite violently, executed them, took them to a square, bang, bang, bang. Yeah, he wanted to make a point. He hated policemen because by his father, obviously. Well, on the 28th, July the 28th, 1938, because he probably got a bit arrogant, but he believed that he was well loved. He was actually betrayed by someone he thought was a supporter. And in the hideout he was in, and others, he was actually attacked effectively by the military. They came in heavily armed. They came in with the heavy artillery, the machine guns, just not the rifles and the handguns. This was serious. If you remember the end of some Western films, out comes the Gatling gun. It's a little bit before, out it came and bang. They were determined to get their people. Now, the gang was killed, or majority of the gang were killed. Our hero, Lampião, and his missus along with them. Interestingly, there's a very famous picture of them all on the steps in Salvador, just of the heads. So if you found online, it's quite gruesome. So you've got to be prepared for it. But a lineup, a rose gallery of just the heads, because they removed the heads and sent them to Salvador for I think analysis. They all look quite peaceful, almost as though they're asleep, minus the bodies. It's a famous photo, and he was considered the last of the real bandits in Brazil in the early 1930s, up to leading into the 1930s. We now know there's no more bandits in Brazil at all. It's totally clear now. Now, the strange thing about Lampião, this leads me into it, is he's still celebrated. I go to parties on certain times of the year, namely St. John's Day, around that time. And they dress up as Lampião. They have a fake wedding sometimes. People have pretend guns they're firing off. They live in some weird fantasy about him. He's seen as a bit of a folk hero, a Robin Hood character, if you like. My wife's mother's family will have a slightly different opinion of him. I never found out the full story, unfortunately, before she died. I'm still trying to find it out. I don't know if it's actually been written down anywhere, but I know something did happen. Anyway, I'm going to round up my part of this podcast, my main speech. My question to Steve is, why do these people, who are basically criminals, villains, whatever else, suddenly become folk heroes? What is it about them do you think actually has a mass appeal or any sort of appeal? So over to you, Steve.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here, isn't there?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Well, let's start off with Dick Turpin. Dick Turpin, majority I know of Dick Turpin is from a song by Adam and the Ants.
Yeah.
And I'm a jolly highwayman. But just shows you if you mix with the wrong people, you're going to get to no good. He joined with the gang. He was probably an asset to the gang if they were stealing deer.
Yeah.
Because you'd be able to cut it up really quick and share it out equally.
Yeah.
Without much problem. Would have made him quite strong, actually. It would be quite a strong, robust person. Butcher. What a butcher's son. I'm not sure about stealing deer is a felony. I don't think they had felonies back then. I think it was common law, thou shalt not steal, the 10 Commandments, and it was based on that. People were sent to death because of stealing game, which deer is. right? So if you
Yeah.
stole royal game, then you were sent to death. Then back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But stealing is
Yeah.
a
Well,
natural law, the Ten Commandments, common law.
mm, yeah. Yeah. Cool.
They use blackface. Yeah, I mean, of course, they wouldn't be able to do that today. They'd be shining in the sunlight, in the moonlight.
Yes.
Don't
Yes.
know, don't know why they didn't use a balaclava at the time
Well,
or a mask, because after they'd done the deal, they could take the mask off and become just anybody else instead
well, yeah.
instead of having to run home, wash the face, and still have traces.
Well, I mean, I think it was a term that was used for the law, but as to whether, yeah, I mean, I always thought they'd have done that, but there might have been reasons why they kept their mouths clear, either to communicate or something else. I don't know. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll investigate that further. Yeah.
So you were either a poacher or, of course, a coal miner on your
Yeah.
way home. If you got some rabbits in your pockets, then obviously you're a poacher.
Well, in the depths of Essex, we don't have many coal mines there, so I don't know if that one would wash, as it were. But you know,
They
that's
might have had them in York in the north.
yeah,
Yeah, you said that he went solo. Very few do go solo. There's always one or two, which you
uh,
brought,
yeah,
because you need one. If somebody tries to react, you've got
yeah,
the other. Even if they kill the principal, the second one, because in
yeah,
them days, they didn't have revolvers. They had like a musket type,
yeah. There's a
so,
pistol, single shot. Yeah,
one single shot. So you only had one chance.
yeah,
Um, Black Bess, yeah. I mean, the Black Bess was associated with Dick Turpin.
yeah,
I think after the fact, that um, many stories are made up,
yeah, yeah,
and so the fact that Dick Turpin was only stealing from the rich might have made him a bit of a hero
mm,
by the populace,
mm,
continue
yeah,
getting away with just stealing by the rich in the stagecoaches.
yeah. I mean,
Because
yeah,
that's what we
yeah,
these days
yeah,
remember him as.
yes,
Right, we don't remember him as being a poacher,
mm,
stealing game
yeah.
from an estate.
Well,
You
I
know,
mean, yeah,
we
the
so
other,
you always see him with the mask, with the black mask and the
yeah,
pistol, with
yeah,
his triangular hat
yeah.
and attacking coach stations.
Well, they did actually go into houses, and he did actually hold women over
Well,
fires to get them
like
to.
I said, like I
Yeah,
said, we don't really
yeah,
know. You have to delve really, really deep
yeah,
into. We're talking folklore, you know.
yeah. That's it. Yeah,
Folklore is not going to touch on that part of it, you
mm,
know. Doesn't
yeah,
get detail.
mm,
Going on to Ned Kelly.
mm,
Um, yeah, Ned Kelly. Folk songs were made about
mm,
in Australia. The Ballad of Ned Kelly, Poor Ned
mm,
Kelly,
yeah,
Kelly Gang,
mm,
uh, and numerous others.
yeah,
He had a good mate called Ben Hall as well. This Ben Hall's an Aborigine. He was an Aborigine.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, um, the song "The Streets of Forbes" was written about Ben Hall.
mm,
I'm not sure if they ever worked together, although they were really good friends. I don't know if they did any endeavors together as a joint venture.
yeah. I mean, people would act as fences or between guys and everything. It was a network. Yeah, it
Well,
was
I
a
don't know.
criminal network, probably.
I suppose an Australian
Yeah,
would be able to fill you in on that one. Um, and now you're coming on to Lampião,
mm,
or Cangaceiro,
mm,
as they were called.
yes,
Uh, I've been to the museum of
mm,
Lampião
all right,
in Piranhas,
okay,
on the banks of the San Francisco River.
yeah, oh,
There, it's got all the artifacts and
mm,
photos and things like this. the thing about Lampião is that yes, he was a very, very brutal man,
Mm.
but he was very respectful to his mother,
Yes.
almost, almost obsessively.
Yes.
You know, nobody could speak bad about his mother.
Mm.
Nobody. Uh, Now, I wouldn't say he had 100 members of his
Mm.
quadrille. I would say
Well,
he
it's
might have
what.
had over the process of time.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
wouldn't
well,
have had it at one time. He wouldn't have had it one time. He didn't have an army as such, because
uh,
this army
yeah.
wouldn't be able to travel around as much.
No, I think what it was, there were little groups, and
Yeah,
I
they
think one of the
are.
guys who died with him was, yeah, the gangs would all sometimes come together and go again, and he put a call out. He needed things. From what I understand of him, it wasn't a sitting army as we would think
No,
about
no.
it, but he had the ability to actually, let's get it, acquire resources as and when required, or personnel as and when required. Um, yeah, I mean, I suppose, yeah, he could just call in, well, I've got this job going. It'd probably be like mafia gangs, in America, we've got this job coming. Yeah, we need a bit more muscle. Yeah.
So you could say he had some freelancers.
Yeah, well, but yeah, but he had command. He had command. Yeah.
Um, Vigolino, his name, Vigolino Ferreira da Silva,
Yeah.
is his real name.
Yeah.
Not
That was it. Yeah.
wasn't born Lampião. That
No.
was his
No.
nickname, of course.
Well, it's because the nickname came because apparently he could actually fire off quite quickly, and it was like they said a lamp almost, because it was like a continuous light as he fired. Which I don't know how you could do that with the revolvers of the day with any
No,
accuracy.
they called him Lampião because they considered him illuminated.
Mm. Okay.
He shone like a lamp.
Okay.
And in the old days, they had these lampions that you
Yeah.
hold
Yeah.
you hold the lantern, and
Okay.
he was always.
I've had a different story. Okay.
I don't know if it was his religious bent that made him like that, but they called him the Illuminated.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we're coming to something. Uh, Maria Bonita,
Mm.
his missus, his when
Yeah.
they jumped the broom
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Uh, Maria Gomes de Oliveira.
Mm.
He never called her Maria Bonita.
Mm.
Her name, he called her Maria de Dea.
Mm.
Dea is a name of her mother. She was when she was alive. She was never called Maria Bonita.
Yeah.
It's only the popular people that called
Mm.
her Maria Bonita when after she was killed.
Mm.
Vigolino, he was killed by a guy called Sebastião Vieira Sandis.
Mm.
This Sebastião, he was one of his bodyguards,
Mm.
and in a raid, in one of the many raids that the band, the
Yeah.
quadrille had,
Mm.
this Sebastião, he was injured and captured,
Yeah.
and normally when the police got them, they killed them.
Yeah.
But the judge said that if Sebastião would kill
Mm.
Vigolino, would kill Lampião,
Yeah.
his life would be spared.
Mm.
So they let him go. Sebastian called Lampião to a secluded spot
Yeah.
and killed him.
No.
Basically,
Okay. Mm.
shot him in the stomach and killed him. So he didn't die in a great shootout, as what many people think, and it certainly wasn't Honorato
Yeah.
that killed him. It wasn't
Okay.
a police colonel. However, they did the two episodes of many cangaceiros being killed, including who we now know as Maria Bonita.
Mm.
And Lampião, they all died more or less round about the same time, and that's how you get that famous photo
Yeah.
of the steps of a, I think it was the town hall, I suppose.
Yeah,
Town
yeah,
hall in Bahia.
yeah. They still exist. I've seen contemporary pictures of them as well. It's quite famous. Yeah.
We were taken by canoe to the other side of the river,
Mm,
San Francisco, where Lampião, it said he spent a lot of his time there.
mm,
And some even say that he was killed there.
mm.
But I'm not too sure about that because it was a tour guide that said it, and so the tour guide's got to make his money. So
Yeah, yeah. It's
it,
just
it just it just shows, that as folklore gets kicked around,
yeah,
it changes shape and morphs into something else.
yeah.
Of the three, what links them together? Why did they become folk heroes?
Mm,
Because in general, they didn't harm the populace. Uh, in terms of Ned Kelly and Lampião,
mm,
a lot of the time, what they stole, they gave to poorer people. They were
mm.
almost like a Robin Hood, if you
Yeah,
like, right? And in the case of Dick Turpin, like I said, he only stole from the rich. He didn't steal from the poor. Uh, at least that's what the folk tales tell us.
yeah.
You know, if it was a Charles Manson,
Mm,
or a Peter Sutcliffe, or a
yeah.
Ian Brady,
Mm,
these criminals, of course they will die, and people will be dancing on their graves because they
yes.
did affect the populace. They did affect the common man.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
these guys apparently didn't. So, and Lampion in his case, like you said, he liked people to be respectful.
Yeah.
And if you were respectful to him,
Mm,
he'd be very respectful to you. But
yeah.
if you tried to rile his goat, he just didn't have that much time
Mm,
for you, and he killed you.
yeah. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Definite
But
decision. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's your link of the three. I think the link of the three, Robin Hood,
Yeah.
or not literally Robin Hood, but the Robin Hood um, ideology.
Yeah. The persona of it. Yeah. The idea, the knowledge, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's the mythology behind it, or the myth. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it is I just thought though, yeah, very, very interesting thing. Interesting other thing about Lampion, was it last year or early this year, his daughter, him and Maria's daughter, was actually at the Rio, was it the Rio Carnival? She was on a float.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, she's what, near 100 or something. And yeah, I think she still does interviews. I don't know how active she is about it all. I don't think she really goes in support of them. She just